All right.
We are live here on the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. My name is James Lynch. He is JHK. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't watched the show before, basically, we do an early preview of an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be looking at the Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier trilogy, which is going to be taking place at UFC 264. But before we get into that, got to remind our audience, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you are watching us live, even if you're watching the replay, it takes 2 seconds to do. Come on, people. We're not asking for much here. And also make sure to download the Fanatics MMA app, best app on the internet. I still got to get my picks in for UFC 262 this weekend. We'll have our underdog picks later in the show as well. So I'll do that kind of mid-show like I did last time. John, how are you? How's everything?
I'm phenomenal, man. But did you get a haircut? Did you get
I did get a haircut
up?
yesterday. Yesterday, I got a haircut.
All right,
yeah,
you look all smooth today.
I appreciate it. Yeah, gotta keep gotta look good for this show. We might have some female audience. Gotta look good for them. So there you go. So that's really excited to talk about this fight. What's the date on it? July 10th. So a ways away, but get it out of the way now. We'll kind of talk about it. And I think there's a lot we can sort of dig into. So like we usually do, let's start first with how we got here. Okay, so how we got here is they fought already this year. We were there, John. We watched it. We weren't there, but we were doing a live stream that night, UFC 257 back in January. Dustin Poirier getting the win over Conor McGregor as the underdog. Pretty shocking result. It was shocking to me because I didn't think Poirier would be able to knock out Conor McGregor. I figured if he was going to win and maybe a late submission like we've seen with Conor or maybe a decision, but the fact that he knocked him out, I think spoke volumes to where Dustin's at in his career and where Conor's at as well. So how we got here is, Poirier did not want to fight for the belt next. That's going to be taking place this weekend. Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira. So he wanted the money fight. I don't blame him. He's been an interim champion. He wanted to go where the money is. This is your last opportunity to fight Conor McGregor, I would think, unless Conor wins and they do a fourth fight. I don't know. But I think in general, Poirier is looking at the big picture here, and the big picture is the big money. I don't have a problem with Poirier taking this fight. What are your thoughts on him, having this fight as opposed to fighting for a title?
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. It was a risk though. You know what I mean? It was a risk because next to the Conor McGregor fight, the only fight that you're going to make money in is a title fight, right? But if he misses out on that and Conor just decides to retire right before the fight, because you remember they did go back and forth on social media and he just said, oh, I'm out of the fight. I'm not even going to fight you anymore. So he has a lot of power in that. And it's a risk, you know what I mean? But I see them fighting anyways. It's July 10th, right?
Yeah, July 10th.
It should happen. Man, it's an incredible fight. I love this fight. I think it's the fight to make. And Dustin made the right choice.
And think about it too. This is kind of a big fight for Conor in the sense that this is kind of a crossroads fight for him. If he doesn't win this, that's going to be, whatchamacallit, that's going to be 3 losses in his last 4. That's not good. And that Cerrone win is looking even worse and worse as time goes on. We saw Cerrone getting knocked out by Alex Morono in his last fight. So this is a big fight for McGregor, and we'll see sort of what changes he can make in this matchup. So let's start first with the notorious Conor McGregor. He's the A side of this thing. Let's be honest here. I know Poirier's been on a better winning streak. Right now, McGregor, 32 years old, 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. Dustin Poirier is 32 years old, 5'9" with a 73-inch reach. So a bit of a reach advantage there for Conor McGregor, just a slight one, but they're the same height and even age-wise, they're the same age. So you really are. It's kind of a rare instance where you have 2 fighters that are kind of at the same point in terms of their age and the physicality and everything. So that's what makes this fight even more interesting. And the fact that McGregor won the first fight, Poirier won the second fight. So there's that as well. Now McGregor, we talked about his struggles here. He's lost 2 of his last 3 fights. Granted, 2 of the best in the division. Khabib Nurmagomedov, who last time I checked, has still yet to lose. Got the win over Cerrone and then fought Poirier and lost that fight. Although I think most can argue, and we said this on the live stream, I thought McGregor won that first round. It was just the leg kicks, it proved to be too much, and Poirier was able to capitalize and get the finish there as well. But I think one of the big things with Conor, and we do have to point it out when we're talking about Conor McGregor, is the lack of activity, right? Ever since he won the lightweight title in 2016 over Eddie Alvarez, he's just fought 4 times, and one of those was a boxing fight. So really, he's only competed in MMA 3 times since 2016. It's 2021, John. Like that stuff does add up. And the thing is too, it's not like McGregor's doing this at an early stage of his career. He's in his prime years right now. So the fact that he hasn't been competing as much, I think has hurt him. And I think you're seeing other fighters evolve, whereas McGregor, I don't know if we're seeing much of a difference there. I think we're seeing, if anything, I think you could argue that he's regressed a little bit in these fights as well. So that's sort of an interesting thing to this as well. The other part of this that is interesting is the fact that, it's another lightweight fight for Conor, right? There's some thought is, should he be fighting at lightweight? Should he be fighting at welterweight? The Cerrone fight was at welterweight. How much weight is he cutting to get to 155? That's another sort of interesting caveat in here as well. But you can't deny the resume. McGregor's the only guy still to finish Jose Aldo Aldo in 13 seconds. I mean, no one's finished Aldo that quickly. He's got to win over Chad Mendes. He's got to win over Eddie Alvarez, which at the time Alvarez had not been finished, at least not recently. So that was a big win as well. McGregor's got a good resume, but the question is, was that just a flash in the pan in terms of that point in his career, or is he legit? We'll sort of find out here. But like I said, this is a pretty crucial fight for his resume overall. You know, when people talk about the greatest fighters of all time, if he loses this fight, I think that takes a big hit here. What do you think of Conor McGregor and his resume and what he's bringing to the table in this trilogy fight?
Man, his career somewhat tanked after he took that boxing fight with Floyd Mayweather, you know what I mean? And the fluctuation in weight too. I think that's a big factor in his fights and his performances. You know, the Eddie Alvarez fight was probably one of the best performances I've ever seen in this sport. You know what I mean? It was just phenomenal. It was flawless. Like his confidence, you know what I mean, in that fight was incredible. But I think after that Floyd fight, his confidence hasn't been the same. Because look who we returned back to. Habib. Like the guy is the greatest lightweight of all time. You know what I mean? Last time I checked. And yeah, he went in there. He went 4 rounds with him. You know what I mean? It's not like he just got finished in the first round. Look at everybody else Habib's fought. I think the latest finish is in his title run, the 3rd round or something like that. So I don't know, man. Just with Conor, he just seems like it's all in his mind. I don't think it's physical. I think it's in his mind. I think his confidence is shot. And, you know, he does well, but once he gets into kind of like into a corner pitted, he just can't come back. And we've seen that happen in the past.
The other thing we have to talk about with Conor is his coaching with John Kavanagh. You know, there was some thought that Kavanagh was this, you know, one of the best coaches in the world. But if you think about it, who else has he really, you know, nurtured along the way? Who's he really built up as another fighter from SBG Ireland? I know Johnny Walker loves him. Johnny Walker, I just spoke to him last week on Chris Cyborg's show. He's very happy over there. You know, fans obviously make the joke about Artem Lobov, but if you look at it in general, you look at Gunnar Nelson, he's been struggling. Makwan Amirkhani's been struggling. Like at some point, if this guy is such a great coach, and again, I like Kavanagh. He's, you know, I've interviewed him before. He's a nice guy, but at some point we got to look at, you know, who are you really building up? Who's really, you know, done amazing things? Like you could look at, say, like an Eric Nixick who's worked with Francis or Dan Ige, and you could point to those fighters and say, look, this is the success here. But Kavanagh, outside of McGregor, what has he really done? So there's some question as well as maybe the loyalty to SBG Ireland is somewhat killing McGregor. Maybe he needs to switch things up. I'm very curious to see how he structures this camp, because obviously what he did last time didn't work. He lost, he got finished. And I think part of that was a coaching issue where he wasn't able to adjust to the leg kicks. And, you know, you think about it, let's forget about McGregor Poirier. That matchup was really John Kavanagh against Mike Brown. And Mike Brown won that fight decisively in terms of the strategy and being able to neutralize a lot of McGregor's weapons. So that's another thing to keep in mind here when we're talking about Conor McGregor. Will he do anything different? Like I think, and I said this after the last fight when we talked about this, I think he would be served well by doing a bit of cross-training, having someone else in there that's going to call him out on his bullshit. Like if he's going to show up late or he's going to do this, because right now everyone's on to McGregor and they don't want to, you know, say anything wrong, because let's be honest, a lot of those people are probably on his payroll and they're making good money. Are you really going to tell someone that's giving you a nice paycheck, hey, you shouldn't be doing this? Probably not. I think McGregor needs to get in kind of like almost like a Rocky camp. He needs to be put out of his element and really get back to his roots and remind himself why. And I don't want to get too philosophical here, but, you know, kind of remind him how he got here. He was a guy that did not come from a lot of money. He came from, you know, a tough upbringing, and to see where he is now, you know, it's like that boxing quote. I forget who said it, but it's like, you know, it's really hard to train hard when you're sleeping in silk sheets. It's essentially the same thing with McGregor here, where he's just very comfortable in the environment he's in. What do you think about that? Do you think, you know, some cross training, or, you know, even him going over to the States and he wants to bring Kavanagh, throw in another coach in there, get a Faraz Sahabi or someone else just to give a different look? I think that would be a good strategy for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be a great strategy going into this fight, because if he's going to do that, he needs to do it now. You know, if he does it his next camp, I think it's just going to be too late. I like to see him go to like a Fortis with Saif. I think that guy could probably transform. Look what he did to Uriah Hall. You know what I mean? Like he's transformed Uriah Hall. It was like one of his original fighters. It was a guy that came in and, you know, and he coached him to where he's at right now. I think it would be a good fit for him. A no holds, what do you call it? No nonsense type of coach like him, right?
Yeah.
It would be good for him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So that's everything we know about Conor McGregor. Again, he could be great. It's just he's got to. This is a moment where he can really turn the tide here. Like if he comes out here and finishes Dustin Poirier, early on, or he gets an impressive win or a dominant win, that's really going to change the mind of fans right now, because I think a lot of people are uncertain as to what type of Conor McGregor we're getting at this stage in his career. Let's move along to Dustin Poirier right now. Great career resurgence as well. We talked about the height and reach, pretty similar to Conor here, and a nice win streak heading into this one. Back-to-back victories over Dan Hooker and McGregor. Prior to that, loss to Khabib. We mentioned it, though. Everyone loses to Khabib. The fight, I think, of people don't give him, as I just talked like Mario there, the fight of people. I didn't mean to say that. But Max Holloway, that's a huge win. Like, I think people sort of gloss over that because Holloway fought at lightweight, but that's still a really good win. Like, how many people other than Volkanovski have beat Max Holloway recently? Not many, right? So that's a really good win to have in your resume. Also, the win over Alvarez and the win over Gaethje. He's one of the few guys to finish Gaethje as well. The turnaround that Poirier has had, because there was a period, in his career where, I remember when he lost to McGregor, and then it sort of forced his hand to move up to lightweight. And then I even remember when he got knocked out by Michael Johnson, you're like, like this chin's still an issue, but his chin's not an issue. He took a good McGregor shot in that last fight. He ended up, persevering and going through. And I just think the work he's been doing at American Top Team, he is by far one of the best lightweights in the world. And I have no doubt that he could be champion again if he wanted to, assuming that's something he's interested in. But a lot of good fights. The Dan Hooker fight was pretty close. I don't think you can really look at MMA math that way. People are like, well, Chandler knocked out Hooker in the first round. It's a different fight. Like, you can't look at two fighters and say they're going to fight that guy the exact same way. The Hooker fight was close, but Poirier still won. And I like the fact that he had to dig deep a little bit and continue to go out there and put on a good fight, with the fact that it was I believe that was a 5-round fight, right? In the Hooker matchup. So that's something, it was. So that, again, having that experience of going 5 rounds, that will pay dividends in a fight like this, which is also going to be a 5-round fight. So that's something to keep in mind as well when it comes to looking at this matchup. But I mean, look at the resume here, John. McGregor, Hooker, Holloway, Alvarez, Gaethje, Pettis, even Jim Miller, beating him. I know that wasn't the best performance. Diego Ferreira was one of the first guys to hand him a loss. Ferreira, that is. This guy has looked outstanding. Not much more to say. And just a good dude, man. Like, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone saying anything bad about Dustin Poirier. So your thoughts on Poirier and what he brings to the table here?
Yeah, when you stack like Poirier's record versus McGregor's record side by side and strip away the titles, you would look at Dustin Poirier's resume and he is a Hall of Fame legend of the division, right? There's no doubt about it, right? Who he's fought, at what point in their career he's fought them and beaten them and finished them. It's just phenomenal. And he's still in his prime, I feel like, Dustin Poirier, man. And I don't know, we could still see the best performances out of him in the future. We just have to find out. But man, when you look at his resume, it's hard to like argue even against like the best guys in that division who they are. You know what I mean? It's incredible.
The thing you gotta look at with Poirier as well is, where's the weakness, right? He's got a good ground game. He's shored that up, since losing to Korean Zombie. He's really, worked on that. He's at a great camp in that regard. He's fast. He's got good game plans. He follows the game plan. That's another thing we don't talk about enough is, it's one thing to have a coach that's good. It's another thing to follow the game plan. And his chin, I think, is held up. I mean, again, McGregor hit him with a good shot in that first fight, or sorry, in the rematch, and he survived it and came back. So I think anyone and it's funny, even leading up to the fight, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, McGregor's going to start Poirier in the first round. I don't know, man. It's like, you look at the one knockout loss to Michael Johnson, 9 times out of 10, he fights Michael Johnson, he beats him. Let's get real here, okay? I mean, these things happen, right? As Gus Johnson once said in Strikeforce. So I think it's one of those things where you got to look at the fact that there's just not a lot of weaknesses with Poirier. With McGregor now, and I know it's easy to say this now because he lost, but there are some weaknesses. He's been submitted a couple times. There's a cardio issue as well, and the fact that I don't think he's getting the best coaching like you see with Poirier. So there's that as well in terms of what Poirier brings to the table. Okay, I know we're going a little bit early here, but I will give my pick for this fight. I think Poirier gets it done again, and the reason I think that is because I think even though McGregor looked good early on in the rematch, and yes, he has a knockout win over Dustin Poirier in their first fight, but we can almost erase that. It was a featherweight. Poirier wasn't at ATT at the time. They're much different fighters than they were back then. Poirier's been a lot more active. I just think it's the fact that I think Poirier, no matter what is being thrown his way, it's something that his coaches have already covered. And I don't see a situation where, and if you're McGregor, I think you got to realize that, look, you maybe can't take out Poirier early like you did in the first fight. He saw that in the second fight. You've got to think you got to have a backup plan if things go sour. And also you got to look at the fact that Poirier could knock you out again. That's one thing I don't think McGregor expected in that rematch. So I think that's another thing as well. The question is, how does this fight end? I don't think it ends as early as it did last time. This time I'm going to go with kind of the pick that I thought might have happened had Poirier won the rematches. I think we'll see a later finish. I could see maybe a 4th round. maybe even third round finish for Dustin Poirier in this fight. But I think it'll be a submission. I think what'll happen is Poirier will knock McGregor down and maybe not go for the kill there, but maybe go for the ground, get a submission win instead, just because we know that's an area where McGregor's been exploited a few times in terms of having submission losses as well. So I think Poirier goes out there, puts on a great performance. And I think after this, people will be like, where does McGregor go from here? I think he's fine. You've always got the Nate Diaz fight in your back pocket. I don't think Nate's going to beat Leon Edwards. You could do the Masvidal fight. Like, there's fun fights for McGregor going forward. He'll be fine. He'll be just like Chael Sonnen was fine. People are like, I don't remember people being like, oh, Chael Sonnen's career's over after he lost to Anderson the second time. He got a title shot against John Jones. He still had pretty notable fights outside of that. So I think McGregor's going to fall in the same category. Now, could McGregor go out there and change some things up and finish Poirier and do the opposite? Absolutely. But I have yet to see any proof right now, JHK. At the time of recording this, today is May 12th. I have yet to see any inkling of him changing things up for this camp, and that worries me. And for that reason alone, I have to go Poirier in this fight. Your pick. How do you think this one goes?
The first fight, you got McGregor. He comes in, the best McGregor you'll see, and knocks out Poirier in the first round, I believe. And the second fight was just so exciting, man, until Dustin knocked him out, right? It was a very good fight. Like, even McGregor, I could confidently say that he was maybe winning those rounds, right? Even the first round, you could say that, you could argue that. And then Poirier just turned it on. It's like he flipped the switch and knocked him out with the flurry from hell, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when you think about it, like you said, you see McGregor, I think he's in Abu Dhabi, which means who's he training with at Abu Dhabi? Like, who's there? There's only one gym that all the fighters go to. He hasn't been there. So is he in his private home, yacht, whatever, and he's training by himself? Is he just on the bike? Is he fishing?
He was with some Indian heavyweight. Did you see something he posted about this? Someone I've never heard of. He was with someone over there, but like, let's get real here. Like, why are you not in the States? Why are you not getting the best lightweights around you? Like, granted, there's some people you just absolutely cannot train with. Like, obviously, he's not going to go to Elevation and train with Gaethje. Fortis might be an option. American Top Team, Poirier's there, can't do that. So that kind of eliminates some of the bigger gyms. But why not go to TriStar and train with St. Pierre or something? Like, just to switch it up. I don't know. It's just, and I know we've got COVID restrictions, but it's a little bit concerning. That's all.
Yeah, it is. It is very concerning. And Poirier, he's going to one of the best gyms in the world to train, where they don't take days off. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. When you look at it, Conor, he did look good in the second fight until he got knocked out, and he was phenomenal in the first. So you could say that maybe he might find that spark. But the main thing about the sport is you have to evolve, and that's not what he's doing. Poirier's been evolving. We've seen it in front of our eyes, right? So I feel like Poirier, he's going to get it done again. I feel like they're going to brawl on the feet for a while, though. I think they're going to start trading. I think McGregor's going to eat shots. He's not going to go down as easy, you know what I mean? Because he's not going to punk out. So, but I still see Poirier winning this fight, man. It's just skill for skill, where they're at in their careers. I don't know. It's just, like you said, how many weaknesses does Poirier have? Not many. Only one is Khabib. That's it. You know what I mean? Khabib found the weakness, but the thing is, the skill set don't match. So it's hard to pick McGregor. I'm taking Poirier. You stole my idea. Like, I thought he was gonna go there, hurt him, and then submit him, like get his neck. You know what I mean? So I think that's what I see too. I think he's gonna choke him out.
There you go. Once again, John and I agreeing on something. We tend to disagree every now and then, but this is one of the days where we have to agree. By the way, one more thing I wanted to point out is that initially when that fight was announced, the rematch, I had Poirier, and I'll be honest, and I'll never do this again, but I got convinced out of it by a lot of people saying, you're crazy. How could you think that Poirier was going to win? And the reason I was picking Poirier initially was the activity level. He's been a lot more active, and we've seen the improvements every fight, and you look at like a Holloway fight or whatever, but I got talked out of it, and I regret it, and I'm not going to let people do it to me this time, because we've seen McGregor lose, and he is human, just like any fighter on the planet. People think everyone's invincible. So there's that as well. And I think there's something to be said as well for McGregor, that if you don't put out your opponent early, like a Cerrone or an Alvarez, it tends not to go well for him. Like even the second Nate Diaz fight, that could have gone either way, and that's Nate Diaz. We're not even talking about a guy that's, say what you want about Nate, but Nate's not an elite fighter. So the fact that you went the distance with him, I think is a little bit concerning. Now, granted, Nate's tough to finish, but you get where I'm going with this, is that I don't know. Like, I think McGregor was I think McGregor was the most dangerous in his career when he was at 145. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he could make 45 and he had that power. And so there's no one even close to his power at 145. He can't make 45 anymore. I mean, you saw the last cut he had to 45. He looked on death's door. Even 55, I think, is a bit of a tough one for him now too. So Yeah, that's my thoughts. We're both picking Poirier here. We'll see what happens again with lots of time. There could be some camp changes between then against, we'll acknowledge that, if we do see McGregor going to like a different camp or something, but I think right now it's just very concerning to see that he's not really switching things up ahead of this matchup. So there we go. Make sure you get your questions in here, everyone. By the way, another reminder, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button on the video. We're always looking to, get more support here on the channel. We really appreciate it. Shout out, by the way, to our producer, Michael, who does an amazing job behind the scenes. If you guys have any questions, just post them in the chat here. And also a reminder to download the Fanatics MMA app. I will get my picks in at one point. We'll also do our underdog picks later in the show as well. But let's start first with Sasha, who says McGregor is not the same fighter he once was. He isn't even training. He's chilling somewhere in the Middle East. That's the thing. Like, we don't we don't know. I mean, here's what I'll do right now. I will go on his Instagram right now, and I'm going to see if there's anything even close to him actually training right now. Because you would think, to not doubt McGregor, that he would be posting a lot of training. A lot of people, not wanting to say that. So I'm seeing there's a video here of him doing, he's just promoting some recovery straight, but it looks like he was running. Looks like he's training with the Indian heavyweight, like I mentioned. This other one, I think he's on a boat or something. He's poolside. Nothing wrong with that. A little bit of recovery, but I see a lot of running. I don't see a lot of training. So we'll see. Again, I'm not, I'm just going off what we see, which is just his Instagram. But I don't know. Again, I don't know what type of training you're getting in the Middle East. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't. Where is his coaches? I'm guaranteeing his coaches are back in Ireland. Running the gym, coaching the other fighters, right? So who's over there with him, coaching him? Does he have somebody, a secret coach? I don't know, man. It's just everything's a mystery, and when it's a mystery, there's so much speculation that could go into it, right? Because every little picture, every little move, people are gonna be watching. You're McGregor, man. Did you see on Forbes? He made the number one on the list. That's crazy for this sport.
Is it though? Like I think for me, it's not that crazy, because you look at how big Conor is. Like, Conor is by far the most recognizable fighter in MMA right now. I don't think there's anyone even close to that. Maybe John Jones, but that's the thing with McGregor is, and I've talked about this before, and we might as well address it here because I think it's very relevant to Conor. Conor literally is like a once in a lifetime type fighter. And I'll mention that, and I say that because I don't know if we'll see anyone like Conor ever again in my lifetime anyways. Maybe down the line you will, but it's got to be the triple threat. You're a good fighter and you're an exciting fighter. It's one thing to be a good fighter. It's another thing to be an exciting fighter. Demetrius Johnson, love the guy, one of the best fighters of all time, only started getting finishes a little bit later in his career and because he's a smaller guy, I think that didn't really translate. Whereas McGregor, even though he's not that much bigger, if you think about it, right? He fought at 45. The fact that he gets these highlight reel finishes was that alone helped his case. Second thing is he's a great self-promoter, one of the best to do it, right? So there's that. So it's like, because we know the UFC, and it's not just the UFC, boxing, all these sports, they have trouble building stars. They have trouble marketing their fighters. McGregor, he did that all on his own. He was a great self-promoter, from the interviews to the tours to everything. This guy is a great self-promoter. And number three, which I think is very important, is he comes from Ireland. If McGregor was an American, there's no way he'd be as big of a star. It's the fact that he represents an area that didn't have a lot of success in MMA in terms of stardom. It's no different than George St. Pierre. I think people gloss over that fact. George St. Pierre never talked a lot of crap. George St. Pierre had a lot of boring fights that went the distance, but it's because of the fact he represented Canada and French Canadians that really boosted his star power, and he was sort of thought as this role model, whereas McGregor's kind of doing the opposite. He's kind of this brash guy, and people like that. It's almost like a Trump thing, where it's like, we like the fact that we can relate to a McGregor. We can like the fact that this guy drinks whiskey and someone we'd want to go hang out with. If you think about it, you're going to a bar. Who would you rather hang out with, Conor McGregor or Demetrius Johnson? Probably Conor McGregor would be a little bit more fun to hang out with. Nothing against Demetrius. I'm just sort of looking at it from that perspective. But that's why Conor, for a long time, and you even look at Ronda Rousey, she hasn't been in MMA for a while, people still know who she is. So it's just one of those things where McGregor is really a triple threat, and it's something you don't see too often in the sport. What do you think of that the marketing side of it?
Oh, of course, the marketing side. I'm just saying, money wise, he was making more than LeBron. He was, Messi, the biggest, sports stars in the world. So you're right, man. He is a once in a lifetime athlete right there. It's just crazy that he'd make that, Forbes. I don't think a lot of people would have seen that happening to us, a fighter in the UFC this early in this sport.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Sash also says, what's going to happen when he loses again? Is he going to retire again and come back and lose again? He has a really bad team around him. They're just not as good as he thinks they are, especially that John guy. So that's something we kind of talked about. We didn't use those words specifically, but you do wonder if, is this team really that good? Again, who else from SBG Ireland has really been making waves in MMA in general? Not many. I mean, maybe James Gallagher, but even then he lost to Ricky Bandejas, right? Like there's times where, you know, you got to look at a team and say, what's the team doing? Not necessarily the individual. So there's that. But like we explained, or like I explained, McGregor's fine if he loses. He's Conor McGregor. Who cares? People will watch him fight a broomstick. It doesn't matter. It's going to sell a pay-per-view. And, you know, again, and I sort of tie this to something we talked about on the show a little while ago, my whole conspiracy theory about the Diaz brothers. I think McGregor's the same way. I think he wants to get out of that contract as soon as possible. He's making what? I saw some figure today. He's making like 22 million, I think, or something for this trilogy fight, which good for him. But he can make even more if he went on his own. He could make even more boxing Jake Paul. You know what I mean? And that's where we're at now, where you look like these YouTube guys have really opened the eyes to a lot of combat sports athletes and said, look, I can get paid triple what I'm making, maybe even more than that, just to fight a YouTube guy. Are you kidding me? So McGregor's going to be fine. And like I said, like, I think there may be a day when he leaves the UFC and does his own thing and does his McGregor promotions and does fights YouTube stars or boxes or whatever. He'll be fine. He's got such a huge brand that will ride him on forever. I don't know what you think about that.
Hey, I see it happen. I see Nate Diaz doing the same exact thing, making his own promotion, co-promoting with Jake Paul or Logan Paul or, you know, whoever, Sean Paul. I don't know, man. Just it, because I was looking at this other card too. It's celebrity boxing with Lamar Odom and
Aaron Carter.
Aaron Carter. I was like, what is that? Isn't Lamar Odom like 6'10"? Like, and Aaron Carter's like a skinny broomstick looking guy. I don't like, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. But you know, it's celebrity boxing too. People are gonna watch that. People are gonna buy those pay-per-views, man. And you're right, man. All these fighters like Nate and Conor, and I'm thinking Masvidal too, man. They're just gonna want to get out of their contract so they could go box. Easy, simple.
Not to segue too much on this, but I don't think that celebrity boxing thing will do that well with Odom and Aaron Carter, because I don't think that's our generation in terms of like Lamar. Like, how many like 20-year-olds know who Lamar Odom is, other than maybe the Kardashian show? But I mean, I know him as playing for the Clippers, right? And then Aaron Carter, I remember him being Nick Carter's younger brother. He did like, you know, the music. They had a reality show. I remember that like a while back was just a complete disaster. It was great reality television. Him and Nick used to fight all the time. But yeah, I mean, like, it's different than say like a Jake Paul, because Jake Paul is today's celebrity, right? Yeah. Jake Paul's like would be the equivalent of like Tom Cruise in the 80s or something. Whereas, you know, Lamar Odom and Aaron Carter now, like I'll probably watch it. I'm not going to watch it live. I'm not going to live stream it, like do a live hangout stream like we normally do with our bigger fights, but I'll probably catch the replay. But to me, I don't have a lot of interest, because it's like, and I don't think a lot of people will either, because like they're just celebrities that people don't really care about. Whereas Jake Paul, there's people very much invested. In fact, to the point of where I still see people getting pissed when people discredit Jake Paul for knocking out Askren. They're like, you got to give him his respect now. And it's like all these defenders. I'm like, oh yeah, it's because they're Jake Paul fans. That's why. So that kind of makes sense. Roman says, what's up, guys? Did you see Gustafson's post last night? He's coming back this summer. Who do you think his opponent could be? What weight class is he coming back in? That's the question.
I hope it's light heavyweight.
I don't think heavyweight's a good move for him. He got absolutely destroyed by Verdun, right? So
yeah, and he looks slow too. Like, you know, he can't be slow like that and be that small at heavyweight. It's not going to be a good combination.
But saying that, where does he really fit now if he does go back to light heavyweight? I mean, not to say that he would have better success in either division, but you look at like he's a gatekeeper at this point. I would think like the fact that like an Anthony Smith came back and beat him, you know, speaks volumes. Like, does he beat a Dominic Reyes? Does he beat a Volkan Ozdemir? Does he beat a, you know, definitely doesn't beat a Yuri. You guys know how high I am on Yuri.
You know who
now.
he should fight when he comes back?
Who?
Perfect matchup. Jimmy Crute.
Yeah, Jimmy Crute would be a good fight. Yeah,
that's a fight. I
if
think
Jimmy's ready to come back in the summer. I mean,
I think he should be ready by the summer. I don't think his injury is that bad. So, I think Gustafsson versus Jimmy Crute. Jimmy Crute's ranked, isn't he like top 10 right now? Jimmy Crute. Yeah.
He's top 10.
Give him some respect and give a chance for Jimmy to, you know, knock off a legend of that division. Why not?
That would make sense to me. So we'll see if that's light heavyweight. I've tried, I don't know how many times to get an interview through his manager, and I know his manager well, same manager as Gegard Mousasi, but I don't know, either he just doesn't like doing a lot of media, or the manager's playing Patrick Ewing and kind of blocking me out. I'm not sure, but in general, I want to talk to Gustafsson if I can get a chance.
Yeah, certain fighters, I've noticed that they only do interviews in person. Mm-hmm. Like, they will not, like, I've done the same thing with Douglas Lima. Like, you know, I've messaged back and forth with him, you know what I mean? And the only time I've gotten to interview him was in person. That's it. Like, I've never, like, he's a nice guy. He's very cool and everything, but he just doesn't feel like doing these remote interviews. It's a trip. Some guys just don't want to do it.
It's true. Yeah, no, that's for sure. Roman also says, by the way, Chandler and Ferguson are going to win this weekend. Well, I think we're both on the opposite side of the coin there. Did you take Oliveira or Chandler? I can't remember.
I took Chandler.
Okay, so yeah, so you're with John here. I like Oliveira. I think he wins. Could Chandler win? Absolutely, 50-50 fight. I don't think Ferguson wins. Maybe he turns back the clock and has like a Brian Ortega type performance where like, whoa, where did that come from? But I don't know. Again, typically when you're looking at a case like this, where you have an older fighter who's taken a lot of injuries, who's been off, not hasn't been incredibly active, fighting a guy who's really turned things around and sort of going towards being that contender, it doesn't bode well. I don't know many fighters that where it's that's happened. So I'm taking Dariush in that.
Yeah, Dariush is on the rocket right now, man. And Ferguson, and people talk about. I think on the what is it? The countdown they're saying like he went to the Freddie Rose's gym like to get coached. But I was like, why would you do that? You need an MMA coach.
I know.
You don't need a boxing coach. You know how to strike. Come on, you need a guy that puts it all together. And it's just like it confuses me. So when I'm confused, I just go with the other guy. But Neil's, yeah, he's on a rocket, man. I think he's gonna. I think he'll be like one fight away from the title if he beats Ferguson, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. We got, how do you think John Jones looks at heavyweight? See some of his photos today. Betting he looks slow at heavyweight. He's already already a one shot at a time striker. I don't know. I honestly can't judge that. It'll be tough to say. I thought he moved pretty well like heavyweight. I don't think he's put on like, I can't really judge too much from photos. I don't think too much, right? Like I think in general, there we go. Shout out to Michael, our great producer there. I mean, look. Okay, can we just talk about something here quickly? Look at the camera angle, okay? Because it is a little bit deceiving. Like John is in the very back, so of course he's going to look a little bit bigger. And then he's got the gut out a little bit and all that. I don't know. Like I can't tell too much about in terms of how Jones looks. Like he just looks a little bit thicker than he was before because he looked kind of skinny at light heavyweight if you look at his frame, right? Because he's a tall guy, really long arms. So I think he's just filling his frame a little bit. But to say he's going to look slower, I have no idea. And that might help. Maybe he needs that strength to compete with like a Ngannou. So yeah, I just say don't put too much stock in a photo. By the way, when did Peter Yan go up to a heavyweight as well? There beside him in the blue shorts. But and it looks like he's being joined by Tim Boach there on the far right as well too. So is that Dylan Dennis beside him on the left? I'm just joking. But no, yeah, I think John Jones. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how he looks. But can we also put to rest that he's ever going back to light heavyweight? Like, come on, like you don't just bulk up and then go on like a crazy diet after this. So, yeah, I think it'll look good. I think that the question we've always said on here that John and I've talked about, can he take a punch at heavyweight? Because we've yet to see him fight a true power puncher. Like Glover's got knockout power, Thiago Sanchez has got knockout power, Anthony Smith has knockout power. Francis Ngannou powers like on a 10. Those other guys are a little bit lower than that. So if he can't take a Francis punch, we'll find out. We'll be able to see if he can take one. I think that's the big question as well.
I think he's going to be able to take it. I think John Jones is going to do well at heavyweight. I think he's going to get beat eventually, but I think that he's going to beat some of the top guys, and he'll probably end up being champion too. You know what I mean? He's also a very intelligent fighter too. People forget about that. You know what I mean? Like he knows how to go in there and execute. And like you said, you look at photos and you look at videos, they're only showing you what they want to show you. They're not showing you like the best parts of the training, right? So they're just throwing it out there. They're playing with the media, I guess.
Yeah. Also, if I had to pick right now between Francis and John, I'm taking Francis.
Yeah,
I have to.
Me too. Yeah. I mean,
what he did to Stipe cannot be.
No. I think I'd probably flip flop back and forth for a while until it like actually got close, and then I'd probably make the pick. But I don't know, man. John Jones is John Jones, though.
He is. But Francis Ngannou, I mean, he's on another level right now. Like he's just beating.
That's one of those like.
You got to do that fight, man. They got to figure out that. Oh yeah. That's the other thing we should bring up with John Jones. His tweet. I don't know if it's still up. He always deletes his tweets here, but he did mention that he's meeting with some agents. Where do we have here? Did he delete it? I think he deleted it. Darn it. He said something about how he's going to meet with some sports agents this week. And here we go. Here's the tweet. It says, the good news is I have 2 really big meetings with some awesome attorneys and sports agents this week. Feel like my professionalism is about to go up a notch, which, by the way, kind of throwing a little bit of shade at first round, which, you know what? Like, I like those guys over there, Malky and Abe. They've always been pretty good to me, but I mean, the way they handled some of those situations, from John's legal arrest to some of the stuff he does on Twitter and just in general, was just a disaster. Like, I don't know how anyone can defend some of that stuff. So that's sort of my thinking on that. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know if you saw that clip I had of Anthony Smith talking about how Jones apparently reached out to VaynerMedia like last year. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but we'll see where he goes. But like I said before, John should be with like a CAA or some like huge powerhouse agency that can really cater to his needs, not an MMA agency. And no, that doesn't include Dominance MMA, because they're not, say what you want about Dominance and them getting good fights. How many sponsors are their fighters getting? How many fighters do you see of theirs saying, hey, we've got, this huge sponsor? They don't have any sponsors. So that's part of management too. So anyways, let's see what else we have. Prime Ferguson or Prime Poirier? Who do you got? So we're assuming Poirier is in his prime right now, and Ferguson's prime would have been back when he was his age. I'd have to take Poirier because to me, Ferguson, there's a couple wins there where you're kind of like Danny Castillo, like there weren't really like good wins there. The Barbosa win was good. He had a couple other like decent wins after that. But at the time I would have taken Poirier, and I still would have, because I don't think Tony would have knocked out Poirier. And I think, as good as Ferguson's ground game is, I think Poirier would have been able to figure it out. So
Ferguson, he was losing a lot of the fights that he won.
Yeah.
Kevin Lee fight, he probably was losing that one.
He lost first round, 100%.
Barboza fight, wasn't he losing that one too?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a bunch of fights. Even like the Venata fight. Remember, he was almost finished in that fight, and he came back to submit him, but he was losing that fight too. You know what I mean? It's like Poirier has a couple of those where he comes back, but most of them he goes in there and puts in work. And prime for Poirier Ferguson, you got to go Poirier, man. That dude can crack.
Here's a great question. What are your personal favorite fights of all time? One that they just flashed up actually the other day, and that doesn't get enough love. Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez won. Go back and watch it if you haven't seen that fight. It took place the same night as Shogun Dan Henderson, so a lot of people forget about it, but that's the fight that made Michael Chandler the face of Bellator. And that was one of the positives of their tournament, because Michael Chandler early on in his career probably doesn't get to fight an Eddie Alvarez, but the fact that he went through the tournament, won his fights, and got a shot at Alvarez made him a star. And that's one of the successes of that tournament, in my opinion, was him getting to fight Alvarez. And that, you cannot find a more action-paced fight, to my knowledge, just from bell to bell, of those two guys just going at like that first round. I think Alvarez gets dropped, then Chandler gets dropped, and then they're just going like, it's like two pit bulls going toe to toe. It was incredible fight if you haven't seen it. I think Bellator still has it on their YouTube channel. They should, even though both are not with the promotion anymore. But that's one of my all-time favorites. Honorable mention, Robbie Lawler, Nick Diaz, for a couple of reasons. The whole commentary in that fight with Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz is biased towards Robbie Lawler. If you remember back in the early UFCs, like not early, but like sort of mid, what I want to say like 2006, 2007. No, even before that, maybe like 2003, 2004. Everything was the Milicic camp. The Milicic camp is the greatest thing ever. They always reference, oh, well, he's at the Milicic camp. He must be pretty good. And that was the case with Robbie Lawler. They kept talking about how he's with the Milicic camp, and he's training with guys like Jens Pulver and whatever, Tim Sylvia. And that was like a big deal back then. And I remember Nick decided to stand and trade with Lawler. And then Joe Rogan on the commentary goes, oh, I think this is a mistake. He shouldn't be trading with them. And sure enough, what happens? Nick Diaz knocks out Robbie Lawler. One of the few times that Lawler's ever been knocked out in his career. I think it was the first knockout loss he had at that point. That just is a great fight, just from that was like the introduction to Nick Diaz to a lot of fans, where he was talking trash and he's fighting this guy in Robbie Lawler who had hair back then, by the way. You almost don't recognize him, and Diaz knocks him out. So those are two that really stand out to me. And obviously Jones Gustafson as well. I was their cage side. That's another one on there. But what about you? What are some of your personal favorites?
Man, one of my favorites is probably the Shogun Dan Henderson fight. Man, that fight was just incredible. You know what I mean? The back and forth, and the damage those guys took and is implemented on each other. It's just bloody. And I think they both had to be like stood up. You know what I mean? They had to be held, you know what I mean, up after the fight. That was incredible. I love that fight, man. Some other fights, some of the fights that I like are not very long. The Czech Congo, what's his name? Pat Barry. Oh my God. That's one of the best fights, you know what I mean? Like Nick Diaz and Paul Daly.
Round one.
Yeah. Even like that last Paul Daly fight, that Hamasi, that was an incredible fight. Did you watch that? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. That was awesome.
You know I mean, like Paul Daly's had some incredible fights. Just some of those that just pop into mind. Usually fights, like, so if a fighter fought recently and had a good performance, that reminds me of some of their awesome fights. And Paul Daly, man, he's had some great ones in the.
Yeah, because Paul Daly's fighting Jason Jackson. I don't know if you saw that. So
that's a huge opportunity for Paul Daly. Jumps right back up ahead of MVP.
Yeah, which I get. I mean, MVP's been fighting subpar competition most of his career. So
but his last fight was a good win, though. Derek Anderson.
It was. Yeah, it was. It was. I'll give him that. There's something I was going to mention and I completely forgot. It just escaped my mind. Anyways, I'll come back to it later. Roman says, this is why I want an Anthony Johnson fight to happen, to see if he can take a shot. And and Anthony was arrested last night. Yeah, we'll talk about the arrested thing in a second here, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like Jones fought Anthony Johnson. I think Johnson has the most power of anyone at 205. And that's what would have been interesting. Could Jones take that shot? And it never happened. It was unfortunate. I can't remember if that fight was ever scheduled. I feel like it might've been, actually. Let me do a little bit of digging here on, apology, but that's one of those, people ask about fights that never took place. That's one of them. That was kind of a bummer here. Yeah, he's supposed to fight Anthony Johnson May 2015. That was UFC 187. And that's when Jones got stripped of his title. So that was supposed to happen after the first Cormier fight, which is crazy. So there you go. The fight that never happened. And as far as Anthony Johnson getting arrested, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, here's the thing. You're a pretty recognizable guy. Like, it's funny when the news story came up, everyone was sort of posting about it, but they're like, man gets arrested, but like no one put together that like you see the photo, it's absolutely Anthony Johnson, but like, what are you doing, man? Like, it's like he was using a fake credit card or something. Like, I don't know, bad look, man. And that's again where management should be, helping these guys out and being like, what are you doing? And I've yet to see their management say anything. You know which manager it is, but yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what comes out of this. But it seems like there's been a lot of issues there with him outside the cage over the years.
Let me play devil's advocate. Let's just say somebody he was with gave him that credit card to use to buy the tickets, and it wasn't his fault. And he didn't know that credit card was somebody else's credit card. It could have happened that way. I'm just playing devil's advocate right now.
No, you're right. You're right. I guess wait till all the facts come out.
Yeah, because man, he's a wealthy guy. The dude drives a Bentley. Like, if you drive a Bentley, I don't think you're stealing credit cards from some random person in your county. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he did. Maybe he's petty. I don't know. Right. But man, it does not look good at all that right after he fought, he got arrested. That's just like,
Well, no, okay. So there's a bit of confusion in that story. This is my understanding of what happened. This incident actually took place in 2019. It's just when he went to Connecticut, they were able to catch him there. Now, I think was that they recognized him or something. I think that's what
he had the warrant. It was open.
Yeah, the way all the tweets made it out, like I was reading MMA Fighting's headline, it made it look like he got arrested right after the fight. I don't think that's what happened. As far as what I read in the report, it said 2019. So I think it was a couple of years ago, and then they just were like, "Oh yeah, this is the guy." So that's
if you have a warrant in like another state, you have to be in that state to get arrested for that warrant. They're not going to come and get you in another state. So yeah, that could be possible.
Let's get some more questions. Kenny Lee in the chat. Good to hear from you, Kenny. One of my fellow coworkers over at MMA Soccer. He says, thoughts on Cerrone? Fighters like Silva, BJ Penn, who's achieved so much, are actually more reluctant to retire because they always got the job done no matter what, which is what made them successful. Yeah, Cerrone's like 0-6, right? Granted, one of those fights should have been a win. Yeah, I thought he beat Pettis, but yeah, I mean, I would agree with the fan base that says, why is he still fighting? Why is Dana White saying he'll give him another fight? I know it's Cowboy, and I know he steps up on it at any point, but we're starting to get to that point with him where it's like, you've had a lot of think of the first round finishes he's had that he's lost. Gaethje, McGregor, and now Alex Morono of all people, and not taking anything away from Alex, but like, I think we're at that point where Chuck Liddell was at, where it's like, dude, it's probably time to hang him up.
Yeah, I never will tell a fighter to retire, and I'll say that to the day I die, because I feel like it's their choice. But man, sometimes when you watch somebody fight and you're like, that guy is not the same guy, and we're starting to get to that point with Cowboy. We don't even see sparks of it. Like that Morono fight, you didn't see any spark of the old Cowboy. That Cowboy is gone, it seems like. And yeah, man, he needs to maybe, take some time off. How old is Cowboy right now? Is he that old?
He's 37, I want to say.
Yeah, so 37. He still probably got a couple more years in him, and I bet you he probably thinks that in his mind too. Should he be fighting in the UFC? I don't know.
He's 38, actually.
Okay, 38.
Yes, and granted, look who's losing to: Ferguson, Gaethje, McGregor, Pettis.
But this reminds me of something that Dan Hardy recently said in the interview. He said that they only want to match you up if you have like a name like a Cowboy or a Dan Hardy against the younger guys coming up. And that's Dan Hardy's problem, is he's saying that, man, I don't want to fight some nobody. I want to fight, a Cowboy. I want to fight, a Nick Diaz.
Yeah. The problem is, though, and I could be wrong about this, I'm pretty sure Dan Hardy can't get licensed. I think the whole reason is a heart thing. I don't necessarily think it's the UFC saying, hey, you have to do this fight or whatever. I think he's just been talking about coming back, but I don't think he's actually cleared medically. That's what I've been hearing, is that
really?
he has a heart issue, and that's why he's having trouble. And that's also why I think he wants to fight. You notice he didn't say, I want to fight Nick Diaz in Bellator. I don't want to fight Nick Diaz in some other promotion. He said Ryzen, and I think specifically there because I think the matchmaking is a little bit looser in terms of what they're allowed to commission.
So why don't the UFC just let him go? You know what I mean? Like,
and also Daniel's the business. Nick Diaz can't just go take a fight. He's still under UFC contract. He can't go fight for Ryzen. So I don't know what Dan's doing there, but
yeah. Well, the thing is, like, the matchmakers made it clear to him, like, we're only going to put you against guys that are coming up because we want to build those guys. We don't need to build you. So, you know, Cowboy, I think that's what's going to happen to him in this next fight. They're going to put him against a guy that they really like in that division, in the lightweight division. Who could it be? Who do you see, like, a guy coming up that the UFC would give him that platform and say, okay, here's Cowboy. Let's see what you can do.
Sean Brady.
See. At welterweight, that he's welterweight. I'm talking about at lightweight.
Oh, lightweight.
But Sean Brady's a good call, though. That's a good call.
That's the type of matchmaking I was thinking at welterweight. So if he's at lightweight, let me just have a quick look here at the rankings.
Makachev?
I don't think he's fighting. Yeah, maybe he fights Islam, but I mean, I think 99% of people knows how that fight's gonna go.
Armin, Fiziev. Oh, Fiziev.
There you go. That's a
Fiziev.
That's a first round finish for Fiziev. I mean, let's get rid of it.
But that's good to build Fiziev's name. Then he could call for the bigger fights, right?
But saying that though, the original matchup was him against Diego. So I think that kind of goes against what you were saying in terms of maybe their intention. So, and I think that the amount of respect. I think the only reason he fought Morono is because they needed him to stay on the card. The card was going to take a big hit if Cerrone was off. So I think it was more of like a courtesy thing. I don't think you'll see him fight a prospect. I think he gets a veteran matchup. For example, like I think him fighting like a Jim Miller again or something would make. He's fought Miller, right? I think. Let me just double check.
I think so.
Like way back in the day, 2014. Maybe him fighting like a Jim Miller again would make sense.
Or Joe Lauzon.
Yeah, that type of fight where it's like veteran versus veteran. I think I see that happening more.
Okay. That sounds better. I like that idea better. I don't want him to fight a Fiziev because that would just be a murder show. Yeah, it's a real murder show.
What else we got here? What is your favorite Cowboy Cerrone memory in MMA? One that comes to mind just because I saw it live was him head kicking Matt Brown. That was pretty cool. And as I was walking back to my seat in press row, like I'm walking in and I'm sort of like watching the fight sort of, on a head on a swivel, and I just see the kick and I hear it, and then I hear the crowd go, oh, and then Matt Brown's down like a sack of potatoes. That was pretty cool.
My favorite Cowboy memory is when Alex Hernandez was talking all that shit.
And then he destroyed
Cowboy. Yeah, and Cowboy was talking shit too a little bit, right? And then he went out there and just put in work against him, right? It was fun to watch. That was fun to watch.
Yeah. Also, the Melvin Gillard fight back in 2012 was good because Melvin, I think, was talking trash. They were former training partners, and he went there and like head kicked him and knocked him out. That was pretty crazy.
And the Rick Story combination, the combination you put on Rick Story.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like a video game.
Yeah, straight up.
That's awesome. If we have any more questions, guys, keep them coming. We got about, we're going to end the show a little bit earlier today. We're going to be, we only got about 10 minutes left in here because I got an interview and we got some other stuff to do after this as well. Just looking at some of the headlines right now, some of the stuff that we can talk about while we're waiting for some more questions in here. Of course, McGregor's front page, a junkie. I'm just seeing what else we got in terms of news. Is there anything you wanted to talk about, John? I'm just trying to see what else is going on here.
We can do the underdog picks.
Let's do underdog. That's good call. I always forget that. That's why. See, this is why you're on the show. You keep me in check here. If we're looking at underdogs right now, I'm trying to see here. I don't think I picked any underdogs in my preview show, but if we're looking at it here, I know one that I think came to mind. I already know my underdog pick. I'm just going to go with this one because it's the first. Actually, I have two. I'll mention both here, but I'll go with my first one. I think Sean Soriano beats Christos Giagos. Soriano's at a great camp at Sanford MMA. I've always felt like Giagos is one of those fighters that's kind of been sort of teetering on being like a UFC level fighter. Like he wins, but they're not like super impressive, or he's fought like a lesser competition. And then his losses are like pretty decisive. So I think Soriano could take advantage. I think Soriano's a lot better at 155. And again, he's been waiting to get back in the UFC for a long time. I don't think he's going to, lose that. So he's currently an underdog. I like him as one of my underdog picks. And then the other underdog pick is I like Edson Barbosa over Shane Burgos. To me, it's going to stay standing. who's the better power puncher? I think it's Burgos. Maybe even you could argue or Barbosa. It's kind of 50-50, but I think Barbosa is a better technical striker. And with it only being 3 rounds, I could see him outpointing Shane Burgos over the 3-round fight. I don't think you'll see a finish. I think the one actually bet I do like in that fight is the fight goes the distance prop. You typically think between 2 strikers that wouldn't happen, but if you look at the amount of times that Burgos has been finished, they've been later finishes. And Barbosa's super tough to finish. Ask Habib Nurmagomedov, asked Kevin Lee, asked a lot of these fighters. He's a very durable guy, and I just don't see Burgos putting him away early. Maybe this is the fight that does it, but I don't think that happens. The fight goes the distance, but I think it's Barbosa who takes it there. So your thoughts on my picks there, and what is your underdog pick this week?
Yeah, I'm not going to take Barbosa. I think Burgos goes in there and fights smart and gets a decision win against Barbosa. I don't think he's going to take too many risks with the kicks and the spinning stuff. Yeah, what was the other one? So yeah, I could see Sean Soriano going in there, but I talked to Christos and he told me he finally has a team with him now. You know what I mean? He's at an actual gym, like a team surrounding
Where's
him.
he training now? I was curious.
CMMA, which is the gym with like Josh Barnett and what is it? Something Henry. Yeah, a guy that champion Ryzen or whatever. And yeah, he actually has a team, so he's there and he cross trains at a couple other spots. But yeah, he says he has the support system now. You know, he didn't have before. So maybe that's the difference maker. But Sean Soriano's a very good. But isn't he going up in weight for this fight?
He's fought at lightweight his last couple fights, actually.
Okay.
He was at featherweight, I think a few times on the regional scene, but since then he's been fighting at lightweight. Let me just double check that. I know he was fighting for UAE Warriors his last couple fights. Or he fought for CES, that was at lightweight. Fought for CFFC, that was at featherweight, and then he fought at a catchweight of 150 in his last fight. So maybe he wants to go back down to featherweight, but this is a lightweight fight, and he's fought at lightweight as well. But yeah, it's been interesting. He's gone. He hasn't had an amazing record since losing. He's gone 3, 4, 5, 6, and he's gone 6-3. So I'm sure he'd like those fights back against Thomas Webb and Bruce Boyington. That didn't go his way, but still, I think Soriano can get this one done. I'll tell you one more I'll mention. I'm not going to make this as an official pick. I think Andrea Lee could beat Shevchenko because you know how to beat Shevchenko. Everyone does. You do what Caitlin Chukagian did. You take her down and you just try and control her down there. Andrea Lee can do that. She's got submission wins. If she's smart, that's what she does. If it stays standing, Antonina's going to win that fight. But if you look at Antonina's career in the UFC, she's supposed to lose this one, right? It's win-loss, win-loss. She's like the Randa Marcos of 125. So I could see her losing this one. And Andrea's got to win this fight. She's lost 3 in a row. If she loses this, she's probably getting cut. So I could see her potentially pulling off the upset as well. She's like a plus 105 underdog. Plus 110, I should say here on the screen. So that's what I'm looking at as well. I'm going to pick Shevchenko, but I think Andrea could potentially pull this off.
You know, my underdog picks, I think Andre Muniz versus Jacare. Yeah. I think he could beat Jacare. He's the underdog. I think that's a good pick to make. I think Jacare's declined so much in the last couple of fights.
The age,
yeah, it's the age and his body's probably a wreck. Muniz, he's a fast, young, hungry dude, man. I think he goes in there and finishes Jacare, man. Even though Jacare is an old dog, I just think that the young guy is going to go in there and take him out. And then also, I'm picking Mike Grundy, but I think Lando Venata, man, I think he's a decent pick for an underdog pick. He's going in there as the underdog.
The problem with Lando, he's so hit or miss. Like there's some fights where he looks good, and then there's other fights where it's like, dude, like how did you like? I mean, let me find an example here, but like, you know, you look like losing to Bobby Green, no big deal, right? Bobby Green's pretty solid, but like you lost to Diakaze, that's a fight he should have won. Frevola was a decision. Beat that Anderson Silva's friend. Remember, he finished him in the first round. That guy was 6-4, who should have never even been in the UFC. That was like a favor. But yeah, I mean, if you look at his overall UFC career, pretty underwhelming. Like, remember when he fought Ferguson? Everyone's like, "Whoa, this guy's amazing!" Like, he dropped Ferguson, he's pretty good. But he never, and then he proceeded to knock out John McDessie after that, which is great. But he hasn't really had that moment where you're like, "Man, this guy could do something special here." So we'll see.
He's very dynamic, but like I think Grundy's gonna go in there and wrestle him, and when he wrestles him, he's not gonna be able to. He's gonna tire out. You know what I mean? The fatigue's gonna set in, and Grundy will probably get a late finish or a decision win. But yeah, it's a decent underdog pick though.
We'll get to one question here from Roman, and then we'll wrap the show up here shortly. If you guys have any more questions, get them in. We'll take maybe one more question after this one. He says, "Oh, did you see Weili's comments on her loss? I mean, come on. Look what people do to guys like Covington, and look what they did to Habib against Conor." I think if I'm not mistaken, he's referring to the fact that I think the American fans were racist. I'll let you stick handle this one a little bit better than me. What did you think? Did you see her comments? I think she said that the fans were being racist towards her, I think, or something along.
No, I don't think it was racist. I think I watched the interview. It's just hostile. You know what I mean? There was a lot of boos. You know what I mean? And of course, those boos are maybe racism, some mixed in there. I don't know, but
Yeah,
yeah, but
probably
it
is.
affected her.
Small
It
percentage.
affected her. You know what I mean? And she also said that she didn't know that she was fighting Rose until like a week before she went stateside. Like
What?
they didn't. Yeah, that's what
They
she
have
was
the
saying in
same
the interview.
manager.
That's
I
what I'm
don't buy
saying,
that unless you
that's
have a
what she
really bad
said.
manager.
She said a week before it was Carla Rose. It kept on switching, and the locations kept on switching too. It was going to be in Singapore, but none of them wanted to go to Singapore, and it was supposed to be Abu Dhabi, but they're like, no, we got to do it stateside. So there was a lot of like details that she kind of revealed in that interview. It has subtitles in English. If you watch it, it's pretty interesting because we never seen her like open up like this. You know what I mean? She was really like open about everything. So
if she's saying that
yeah.
though, she's got to have inadvertently kind of thrown her management under the bus, because that's what your management's for. They're supposed to keep you in the loop with that stuff. And the fact that they have the same, and Carla, they have the same manager too. So what's going on? That's a bit weird. Here's my thoughts on the comments, and I've said this before, and I've touched on this in some other podcasts as well. Look, everyone should be nice to people. I'm a big proponent of that. I don't like bullying. I don't like people being rude or racist or whatever, all that stuff. I'm against all that. But saying that, I feel like people forget that Brazil's pretty hostile. I mean, you look at, forget about what Colby said about Brazil, but you look at some other fighters, they're literally walking out there being given those chants, like, you're going to die, we want you to die, all this stuff. So when fighters come over here and they get booed, that's a big deal. Like, I'm sorry, I can't have a lot of sympathy for that when you're seeing that happen in Brazil, and I don't see the media sort of making a big deal out of that. And look, it's got nothing, no matter what, American fans are going to cheer for the American. I don't like that. I think it's stupid. I think when it's done when they go USA, USA. Is it racist? No, it's a tribalism thing. It's no different than when St. Pierre fought BJ Penn and they're going USA, USA. It's no different. Was I offended as a Canadian? No. But I get it because it's your hometown guy, like in home country guy. So that's where I kind of get lost in that whole conversation, because I know some people made a deal of how, oh, fans were being racist or fans were being discriminatory. And also, I don't know, can she even understand what the fans are saying? Like, obviously you can hear a boo, but some of the comments that were made, she doesn't speak a lot of English, or unless she maybe knows what that is. But that's where I kind of lose it. Like, look, I don't like to see any fighter get booed, or I don't like fighters getting trashed. I'm totally against that. But we got to look at the grand scheme of this, and that happens in other, areas as well. That's all I'm kind of pointing out there. So I don't know your thoughts on this. Is this?
Yeah, like boos are boos, man. Like wherever you go, if they don't like you, they're gonna boo you. It's just natural. Like you gotta accept it. You're an athlete. You know what I mean? You can't, I can see it affecting her, but as an athlete, you gotta get over that, right? That's part of the job. If you can't perform under the boos, then you're not going to be able to perform under anything. You know what I mean? It's just part of it. It's your job. You just go in there and do that, right? But I understand what she's saying, and maybe all of that stuff did get into her head. All the the comments about China and all that stuff. It could now she's saying she doesn't want to come back unless it's a fight that is in Abu Dhabi or whatever, neutral grounds. And it's just like Andrade went to China to fight you. You know what I mean? Like you can't have everything in China, right? I'm just being real.
Exactly. And thankfully, we didn't get any boos on this show today. So I want to thank our audience for tuning in here today. We're going to wrap up a little bit early. Again, just a reminder, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I will put my picks in later today. You got my word on that, so you can make fun of me if I'm wrong. John, what do you got coming up this week, and where can people get a hold of you on social media?
JHK MMA. And if you want to see what I'm doing, just follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at JHK MMA, and it's all there for you.
Same thing with me, Lynch on Sports. Join John and I this Saturday on my channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. We'll be doing a hangout live stream during UFC 262. So if you guys want to join us, submit questions, get our reactions to the fights, we will be there 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time. And make sure you tune into this show every single Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time, where we preview an upcoming notable fight and take your questions. For John Coe, for James Lynch, for producer Michael, we are signing off here today. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.